What do you get if you take a pinch of The Young Ones, a smidgen of Sex and the City, and wrap all of that up in the Friday the 13th franchise? Unmasked Part 25 is the answer, the focus of this week's Look Back At, which is a 1988 British slasher parody film directed by Anders Palm, being written and produced by Mark Kupforth. It stars Gregory Cox as Jackson, a hockey mask wearing serial killer who develops a romance with a blind woman named Shelley, played by Fiona Evans, and grows weary of his murderous ways. The film opens really strongly, with the first act being Jackson working his way through a London flophouse party, killing the guests in gruesome and inventive ways, with some brilliant use of practical effects to create some real gory and entertaining deaths, which is the strangest thing about Unmasked Part 25. It works far more as a straight slasher than it does a parody. The problems start both narratively for Jackson and literally for us viewers when Jackson meets Shelley, a blind woman and the last guest left living at the flophouse party. Her and Jackson somehow bond and fall in love over the next 40 minutes, where the film asks us the question, what if Jason Voorhees was actually British and suffering from ennui? It is strongly intimated that Jackson is in fact Jason, with his backstory of him fleeing his abusive alcoholic father and moving to America with his mother before drowning at a summer camp, then going on to kill the camp counsellors, being explained by Jackson during this middle act, and being extremely familiar. The middle third of the film is dominated by long bonding monologues between Jackson and Shelley, and Jackson and his abusive father, along with some of the driest British humour you will ever see in your entire life. Even I, a British person with a fairly laconic sense of dry humour, found the humour in this film so dry it makes the Sahara Desert look damp. The third act starts with Jackson snapping out of his ennui brought on by his lover Shelley when a bunch of 80s hipsters mistake him for his in-universe filmic version of himself and ask for an autograph and try to take his mask off. This sends him once again into a murderous rage where he stabs one of the hipsters, then crushes his father's head to death, before setting off to find and kill the hipsters, who have holed up to recover at a house in the woods, which once again sets off a chain of Jackson brutally and brilliantly killing them off one by one, with maybe the one real piece of true slasher satire being when Jackson says it's pointless running from him, as the victim will just trip, as that is her fate just as much as it is his to kill her, which she of course instantly does, allowing him to saunter on over and impale her on a garden fork. Once he has murdered them, he goes back to Shelley, who announces she is pregnant. Jackson apologises before slitting her throat and uttering these lines.
It's a hell of a life being a monster. It's a hell of a life.
He leaves and walks down the city streets before falling to his knees in anguish when he sees a cinema marquee that reads The Hand of Death Part 26, Jackson Returns. Unmasked Part 25 is such a weird movie. It has some absolutely brilliant parts. Like the premise and all of the kills, the film was always intended as a parody of slasher films and the entire concept of sequel films. After watching a number of installments in the Friday the 13th film series over a weekend, writer and producer Mark Kupforth had the idea to write a parody of the franchise. The inclusion of Part 25 in the name is a direct reference to the numerous sequels in the Friday the 13th series. There is some confusion as to whether the original title of the film was always Unmasked Part 25 or The Hand of Death, as seen in the film's final shot and the title card. The problem that this film has is that it actually functions far more as a straight slasher than it does a parody of slasher movies. Emo Jason Voorhees gets old really fast during the middle act of the film, and I've said before, humour is subjective, and much of the humour that is, I guess, supposed to fuel the middle act is just so dry. But it was too dry for me, and I find myself getting mildly bored by it all. But overall, the first and third acts and the just unusual blend of elements are strong enough to make this a worthwhile watch. It is certainly very British and very 80s, and probably one of the most unusual B-movie curios I've brought to you in this series. So that's Unmasked Part 25. Available now on Tubi if you wish to stream it. I don't know what will be next. Subscribe and all that jazz if you really want to see what actually it will be.